meeting to order. It is 6:04 p.m. and we could get started. It looks like we have all the team members except for AG Smith joining us today. And I was going to mention, since at our last meeting, Cam Collins was not able to join us, but Cam Collins and Tyson Grip are now our BLM representatives. They are non-voting members, but they will be on these meetings with us and definitely a valuable part of the team, but BLM will not be voting when we go to make motions and project proposal type, but definitely be a participant when it comes to the discussions for sure. So the second thing on the agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at it, and would anybody like to make the motion to approve?
This is White. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do we have a second? All right, moved by Wyatt, seconded by Chris. Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we have passed the approval of the agenda. Next item on our agenda tonight is we didn't get a chance to approve any minutes yet. So going back to our February 17th meeting, did you guys receive that from Cassandra? Both copies of the minutes. Hopefully we received the February and the August meeting minutes. But as far as the February meeting minutes, does anybody have any concerns or edits to those as they are written?
No edits for me, and I would move to approve both sets of minutes.
Great. Would anybody like to second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Chris, seconded by Joel. Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we have passed the approval of the February minutes. Now moving on to the August 10th minutes. This was our meeting in Wells. Did anybody have any corrections or thoughts about those minutes if you look through them?
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the correct set of minutes, but there is a note with a question mark by it about O'Neill PPA and having 3,000 miles of fuel breaks. It's actually about 410 miles that are proposed.
Yes, I thought that I had submitted, because I knew it was closer to, we said about 300 is what we said in that, but we certainly can make that correction. If it's 410, we'll get it as accurate as possible. With that correction, would anybody like to move to approve those?
I'll move to approve them.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a motion by Val and a second by Todd. And everybody in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. Okay, we have approved the minutes. The next is just going to be a standing agenda item for us. It's member announcements and correspondence. So at this time, if anybody had anything they'd like to bring up or talk about, we certainly could. I had a note to make sure to introduce Cam and Tyson. So since we already covered that, does anybody have anything else to bring up? Okay, this is going to go quick and easy. So next agenda item is the main event and why we're here. We're going to look at the project proposals and discuss them. Was everybody, I'm assuming everybody received those, hopefully had a chance to look them over. Basically, what we did is Brittany and I took the discussion and suggestions from our August meeting and kind of teased those out a little bit, tried to put some dollar values to some of those projects and just acreages if we could, et cetera. So we had to take a lot of liberties. The other thing is the The project proposals are not super detailed. I added some additional language in the bottom, and Brittany and Tom added some stuff in there too, but we certainly, I would assume you kind of, I guess since we're the first ones to actually be moving forward with project proposals, we can see how this goes, but I would assume they can be fairly vague, but then as they move forward through the Oversight Committee, that we may want more details, maps, more information, et cetera. But at this point, I can bring those up. I can share the screen if you guys want to, and we could look through them. Let me try to do that. Of course, I have to move I have a really awkward way that I have to set my screen up here with my camera. Okay, can you guys see that?
I can't.
No.
It's not showing the first Charleston Fire shrub rehabilitation.
I'm still seeing you.
Okay, let me try again. That come up?
There it goes.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll make this our first one, and this project was maybe to put some shrubs back in the Charleston Fire. I wonder if I can bring up real quickly. Let's see how hard this is for me to toggle back and forth. But here's just a picture. I'm going to turn off my camera for a second because I keep having to move my screen, and it's a bit awkward there. Let's try to. Okay, there we go. So yeah, so this is a 2006 Charleston Fire with some other years on it, and I've got the hunt units along here. So here's the Marys River for context there. And so it was a huge fire. It was in transition area, and the idea would be to look at where the deer. We've got a ton of collaring data. Look at where the deer have been using the area, see if there's some areas where we haven't had shrubs come back. We may be able to do some pre-monitoring to figure more of that out, but that was the basic idea for this project. Uh-huh.
If you're showing a map, we cannot see it.
Okay, let me see how I do.
I think it has to be on the same screen you're sharing with the project.
And it is, okay. I don't know how to, so let me just, sorry, guys.
That's fine. Actually, and maybe Brittany or Tom can answer this question while you're figuring that out. Carrie, can you just remind me again? We have these 6 different potential projects. How many of these are we looking to try to forward on to the state office or the next level above to actually try to seek implementation of? Are we trying to approve all of them? Are we looking to approve some subset of them? Any guidance on that? I know we discussed it a bit at the last meeting, but I'm just unclear on what we should be trying to actually get pushed through.
Tom, did we get any further clarification on that, or are we thinking that we would have 3 projects for Area 7 and 3 for Area 8?
Yeah, I haven't really got any clarification, but I believe it's going to be 3 for Area 7091 and then 3 for 08 or 081. And we're going to submit all of those, but every team in the state is going to be submitting 3 for each management area. So there's going to be a pile of them, and I believe they'll probably end up prioritizing, we won't get all 6 for the Area 7 team. It'll be maybe 1 for Area 7 or 1 for 081, something like that for the first round. It just kind of depends on how they fall out, but they're going to have to prioritize statewide, and there's going to be a whole lot of projects. So anything that doesn't get, tagged to move forward this year will stay in the queue.
Great, thank you.
So having said that, do you guys want to, do you think it would be in our best interest to actually prioritize, like go through go through all 6, see if there's anybody that has any further discussion or anything they would like to change. And then at the end, should we kind of try and see which ones we want to put forward? And then if we had to narrow it down to our top 3, maybe try and take a stab at that.
I don't know if this is the right time to say this or not, but I'm just going to throw it out there. So I did a vote with Elko Bighorns Unlimited today, sent an email out to our board, and we agreed to donate $20,000 to the Area 8 Mule Deer Habitat Use Assessment and the $1,500 for the tooth collection. So I just want to let you know that.
Okay, thanks, Todd. That really
Awesome.
helps. Yeah, because I think in our assessment of which one, how we would prioritize in that, I think projects that have funding already towards them or partners or something may come out a little bit easier. So we'll have to think about it if there's a benefit in having something that's already partially funded or entirely funded, or if we look at it from a pure, like what would be most beneficial to the deer standpoint.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
and
we
if we need to change that at all, like that'd be no problem putting that 20,000. If we decide on something more, important, we can do that too. That's easy.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, let's and maybe we don't need to spend much time on each of these proposals since we did discuss them at our meeting. It's up to you guys. Would you like to go through each one and talk about the projects a little bit more, or do you guys just want to bring up any questions or concerns you had on any of the proposals?
This is Wyatt. It just seems like in the past that most of the projects that move forward are the ones that have the ducks in a row, even more so than the funding. And I'm just curious what the progress is, or what the standing is on these different projects, as far as like if we need an EA, or the paperwork backup seems to be the biggest hiccup, even more so than funding. So are any of these projects more turnkey than the others? I guess that's my question.
Brittany, would you mind jumping in on that one? Because you kind of know a little bit. You had spoke with the BLM or CAM for that matter. But what did we figure out that we would need in order to go back? Because the EA on this Charleston fire has expired. It was 2006 fire. But what was going to be the process to be able to get plantings in there, Brittany, in a timely manner?
After talking to Tyson, it didn't seem like a whole lot would be needed, but probably just a DNA, just because shrub plantings, I guess, are easier to push through. But if we wanted to herbicide or seed, it would have been a little more difficult. That's what he told me. But Cam, if you have anything to add to that, that'd be great.
Oh, that sounds completely logical. And the other, I guess, if you want to move on to another project now, the one on Goose Creek Fire, I know that Marissa is kind of canvassing for other ideas in terms of where to put specifically bitter brush next spring or next year anyway. And I think a few of you were copied on that email about putting bitter brush into that fire, and it would be really easy because the paperwork is done. We're still under that ESR decision, and so it's been postponed a couple times. But I think in terms of what this group might want to do, even though that's a very important potential project, I wonder if it might go to the bottom because it's a very high likelihood that BLM is going to get it done.
Which is good news. Yeah, it makes you wonder if we don't want to put it in as just an easy win. But yeah, you've got to be careful. It's all strategy, right? And yeah, so if we didn't think it was, the good news is with that one, yeah, like you say, there's no additional NEPA required. So it is an easy one that is already on BLM's radar for sure. And Tom, do we have any sense, has there been any further discussions about when is the Oversight Committee going to make any decisions on these until they have project proposals from all of the other teams?
I haven't really heard. My best guess is potentially associated with the November commission meeting. That committee will probably meet, and whatever projects have been submitted, maybe make some decisions then, but there's been no official word.
Yeah, that would be my guess as well, and only because I know some of these groups haven't even had their first meeting yet. So I mean, we're so much farther ahead than many of the different groups that I can't imagine them waiting at this point to, you know, for all the groups to get their meetings scheduled and field tours completed and get through this process.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder, you know, if we're coming in kind of as one of the front, if there's a better chance, you know, there would be another reason to maybe, you know, they could tell us to prioritize, and maybe we should anyway, but maybe go ahead and submit all of them, just because maybe they'll want to get stuff kicked off too. But we'll just have to see how it all plays out. There's a lot of unknowns at this point. The map that I put up, can you guys see the Goose Creek Fire map? Yeah, so the 2 dots were, when we went out on the fire tour, the 2 dots were just areas that we were planning on putting better brush on that particular fire. It's near the White Rock Mountain area, important winter range, etc. So just so you guys know what that screen is showing. Does anybody have any questions? Because that's the thing. So that's part of our discussion we had and should have is timing. And if we thought that this seedling planting could happen this spring, it obviously is a little bit more timely. Same thing kind of with the tooth collection. I believe that we're going to be, by the time we get approval and submitted and all of that, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to take advantage of this hunting season. But we may, it just depends on how the committee moves forward on this as well. So some of them have timing issues, whereas like the Charleston seedlings and stuff like that, we don't even have anything proposed yet. So that one would be further out. So we also have timing issues to think about.
And Carrie, just to clarify, I'm not completely sure that the bitterbrush seedlings would go on Goose Creek in spring of 2022, or if it would be 2023. In the email, it sounds like they already had the bitterbrush slated for another project, but I don't know if that meant some of them could go to different projects or what that was. But just so you're aware, it could be spring 2023.
Okay, and when we did the project proposal, we assumed that we would be buying seedlings for it and the labor to put them out is what Brittany and I assumed with the project proposal. So just so you know, when you see the amount, that's what we're talking about. Since we're looking at maps, I will share a little, so Brittany, can you guys see Murdoch Mountain now?
Yes.
So this is a map that Brittany helped with, and we basically did an exercise of looking at phase 1 and phase 2 juniper that are on private lands on Murdoch Mountain. And we've been working with Joe Glasscock with Winecup Gamble, and they are very interested in partnering with this. We also, I put in the project proposal, William Katowski with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has up to $75,000 that he'll be able to put towards this project as well. So it would be his funding, which will make that one quite attractive, and then being able to do extra. I looked at this project recently. The thing I'm most concerned about is literally getting in there. Boy, those roads have really deteriorated since the last time I've been in there. But anyway, it seems like everything is on track for this project to be beneficial and to be moving forward. So even if the proposal didn't make it through the Oversight Committee, there still will be work being done on Murdoch through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Partners money. But we would just hope to expand it.
Hey, Carrie, on the proposal form for this one, it doesn't list the private landowner. It just lists U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So maybe wise to put both those down there as.
As a partner.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
again, I think it is where we can show that it's, this group and the Fish and Wildlife Service and a private landowner. I mean, that can't help but, get some traction, I wouldn't think.
absolutely. I think I was waiting to make sure I got the go ahead from Joe. Verbally, he said that he's on board. He was going to, I sent this map to him and things, and he was going to get back to me. But yeah, as long as I make sure that he is willing to commit to be on a project proposal, but he is already a partner with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So I think that it would be appropriate to put him on there at this point. So I will do so. Does anybody else have any thoughts or questions, or do you want to look at the proposals again to maybe jog your memory? I know we're having a trouble. I don't know if you guys noticed on the non-habitat forms, the text that you put as in the comments section kind of cut off, and I'm not sure. I'll just have to get that figured out. Somebody that made that PDF, I don't think accommodated that, but if you just take your arrow key and scroll down, you could read the rest of that text in there if you guys had any trouble with that.
Carrie, you said 75,000 was coming from the partners program with William.
Uh-huh.
Am I looking at the wrong form that says U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service 50,000 on the Murdoch Mountain?
Yes, and we just literally talked to William right before this meeting, and he said that he corrected me and said that it was at least 75,000, might be more. What he did was he put in for some 3362 money with Wine Cup Gamble to do some fence work on Loomis and to do this Murdoch Mountain project. And so it depends on how much money he spends on the fencing project to how much is available on Murdoch Mountain. But he has $100,000 total, and he didn't want to spend more than 25,000 on the fencing portion of it. So that's why I say at least 75,000. It may be more once he finalizes that fencing project. And many of you may have heard that William is going to be moving on to another position, but we'll be working with other folks with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that will kind of take over this project and get those details sorted out shortly.
I think that's why I was asking, actually, more than anything, just making sure we were on the same page before he left.
Yep, absolutely. So I will make a note to change that to 75,000, and then obviously we'll update it again if we get more information. So it's nice that I think as we look at it, the projects have a lot of funding and support and partners and different things. Probably the two that stick out to me that would be a little outside is so the Charleston one, like we were talking about, it'd be a DNA needed through BLM to get that for the shrub rehabilitation project. And then the Meadow Creek fuel break, what ended up happening with that, so the O'Neill PPA-EA focused on, it was mostly focused on sage grouse. And so a lot of the fuel breaks that were put in, it was all sage grouse driven. And so I think that's why Meadow Creek might have gotten overlooked, although there's some pretty amazing sage grouse values over there too. But what I'm showing on the screen, the black line that goes across is the boundary for the O'Neill Basin PPA project planning area. The blue lines are proposed fuel breaks that are already in that EA. Cam, I heard that we would be seeing that before the end of the fiscal year. Is there any truth to that?
Probably not the end of the fiscal year, but I know there's a deadline Friday for folks to have their stuff done and then probably be shipped off to the solicitor. at that
Okay.
point.
Great.
But don't quote me on it as usual. And I guess as you're pointing out fuel breaks here, are these the newly updated ones? Because I know the fuels program just made literally very recent changes.
Probably not.
Okay. I'm going to
So-
go over and look and see if I can find anything that has been changed in that Meadow Creek area.
Okay, but the idea was here's, as Meadow Creek comes down and you can see you kind of have an area where it just hasn't burned. Most of you that have been up there, Todd and I were having a conversation about this country. It's just amazing, intact transition, super important. Mule spent a ton of time. You probably can attest to this too, Wyatt, that it just gets used very heavily by mule deer as they're migrating through. A ton of deer that come out of the south end of unit 072, north end of 73, just file through this on their way over to Hot Creek Reservoir, where they kind of make their turn and go down into the Snake Mountains. And so it's just an area that would be pretty devastating if we lost it, because it would take so long to get it back into any kind of condition that it is now. And so the thought was I don't think that the group was ready. Our team is ready to necessarily propose what the fuel break should be. I think we should talk to Tyson and other folks before we actually put any lines on the map, but just wanted to at least look at it. And so, Brittany, my memory's horrible. I know we asked Tyson the question, because this is in O'Neill PPA EA project area, is it something, and maybe even to you, Cam, is it something, I know it can't be added because we're probably too far down the road to get it added into the EA, but is it something because of minimum that fuel break, I'm just thinking I'm losing the word, but the programmatic fuel break EA that BLM had, did Tyson think that they could do it under that?
I think that would be an option. Yeah, maybe to DNA off that. But having just scrolled over to the O'Neill PPA document, I could probably share my screen here if I could figure it out, but it looks like Meadow Creek got that fuel break added. It's coming from the northwest down to the across the private there, and then continuing on a little to the southeast.
Cam, I'll stop sharing my screen and see if you can just hit at the bottom. It says share screen. See if you can show us what you're looking at.
While Cam is trying to figure that out, yeah, I can attest to that. That country is ripe for a fire. We spent the past 10 days riding in there and moving cows, and you can't hardly ride a horse through there, let alone walk. And to put a fuel break in there somewhere to, could possibly save some amazing country in there. Yeah, it's amazing habitat, but my goodness, you would not stop a fire if it starts in there right now. There's no way in hell. So,
are you seeing this document?
Yes.
So I think where we're talking about is right here. That's not on your screen, and it is in the newly updated map.
Fantastic. So does that basically take it off our proposal list because it falls under, it should be in the O'Neill PPAEA as written right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But would that take it off our list, or would that almost elevate it in that the approval is going to be there? And I mean, just because it's in the O'Neill PPA doesn't mean there's funding for it necessarily, does it, Cam?
No, it doesn't.
So I would almost think it would elevate it on our list, being that yeah, if the NEPA is about to be done or getting closer to being done, that yeah, we could implement as soon as that document is finished.
Well, here's where we talk about, we've talked about this and I don't know if we got any good clarification on this, because we talked about this at the meeting. And if that was the case, we should probably put all the public sections on Murdoch in here as well, because that's, if this is the case, I think we kind of got the impression that we kind of didn't want to, I don't want to say double dip, but look at any of the projects that were already in the O'Neill PPA EA, because that process was already undergoing. But if we want to put a project proposal where we pick out what's in the EA that we think is the most important for mule deer, I completely agree with that in concept. I'm just not sure how to do that, or what it would mean. But I know that this group has talked about how much we would like to support that EA going through, because there are a ton of projects in there that will definitely benefit mule deer. Anybody have any additional thoughts? Maybe Cam, since you weren't involved in those initial discussions, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, given that it's going to be the BLM fuel shop implementing all the treatment areas in the O'Neill PPA, Tyson's the guy that's going to be able to answer that the best. But I think a prioritization from this group in terms of what the most value would be to mule deer would be useful for that, because like I said, there's not guaranteed funding that Meadow Creek fuel break will be available as soon as this thing is signed, but eventually it'll be there. If we had a prioritization from a group like this, then perhaps when the funds do show up, they could go there first.
This is Wyatt. I remember when this Meadow Creek fuel break was added. This is way back when we started the sage grouse discussions, somewhere around 9 years ago, just in a concern of fires in general destroying habitat. And whether it's for sage grouse or mule deer, that fire is going to do the same damn damage. And so as far as I'm concerned, that would be something that would be pretty important to show some more interest in from this group, considering it was brought up by the sage grouse group many years ago. So anyway.
Absolutely, Wyatt. I'm just trying to figure out, guys, where do we, so because the tools were given are these project proposals, do we put one that's O'Neill Basin PPA EA, and then explain, it's Meadow Creek field break? Well, it's quite a few of the field breaks that would be beneficial to mule deer, not just Meadow Creek, but and then a lot of the juniper removal. Would we want to look at it and figure out which ones, like as a group, do we want to look at everything being proposed and pick the most important ones? Or do we, I'm just trying to figure out how we do this. Do we have a project proposal that is just the O'Neill Basin PPA EA and why it's so important to mule deer? But I don't know what the Oversight Committee could do with that, other than encourage that EA to go through, because like Cam says, until it gets through the process and a decision comes out and all that, then you worry about the funding, which this group hopefully will still be in place and can start putting those through. So I wonder if at this point we wait for it to come through and then prioritize the projects, just as obviously it would just be as our opinion, or our thoughts on it as a collective group. It's still BLM's document and BLM's decision. So help me sort through this. Tom, do you have any ideas on how we put this in proposal form? Or anybody?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute my deal there. Yeah, I don't know. I think just kind of cut and paste the proposal the way it is in the O'Neill PPA, and send it to the Oversight Committee. And I think that's probably the best avenue to get funding for that, which will bump it up, help BLM out, and get those projects done. This may be the perfect way to do it. So whatever's in the PPA, I think you're already set to go.
So
Yeah,
go ahead, Chris.
my thought is we stay the course as we currently have it laid out. I mean, we've talked through these projects, and whether they're in the O'Neill PPA or they have some other, approved NEPA, or whether they don't require NEPA. I still think, we stay the course with individual projects that are specific. I mean, there's nothing saying we can't come back right next year or the year after and, take a different approach of taking, a whole slew of things within that O'Neill PPA and then submitting it as one big project plan. I just worry that with how new this process is if we try to lump too much together and too much complexity, it may make it difficult for the oversight committee to really buy off on this, grand scale thing. And I almost think starting with these individual projects as we have them laid out is a better approach. And if there is some already approved NEPA or a NEPA about to be approved, like this one with the O'Neill PPA, we just call that out in the comments section of the description for each one of these projects.
Yeah, I think that might be the way to go. I was just thinking about that. Yeah, we could just add language in the Meadow Creek fuel break and in the Murdoch Mountain juniper removal and just say these projects are, one of them's in the PPA, but the other one is definitely adjacent and connected to. And so I think that would help it even because we're so close to that NEPA document coming out. And I agree that, we don't want to make this too complicated or complex, or it could make it less successful. So, and if we're thinking about the whole gist of it is what's the most important thing for these mule deer. And I mean, just as the biologist, I mean, I would say that the two areas are what's scaring me the most, as far as losing some of the sagebrush basins on Murdoch to encroachment, and losing that sagebrush bitterbrush basin of Meadow Creek to fire. So they're both kind of under threat of habitat loss at this point.
Other thing too, and I think it would be wise to do is, as we explain that in that comments section, also call it the point that, once the O'Neill PPAA is approved, that there's additional project work that will basically tier or fit right into this project, so that it's something that's scalable over time. So i.e. we fund this one to start with, and then, once we get farther down the road, we can fund additional field break projects that tie right into that Meadow Creek project, as an example. And again, and then when you submit those future projects, you can then basically tier back and say, hey, this ties right into the Murdoch field break project. And again, to me, it just makes a lot of sense to be an easy sell to the oversight committee to say, hey, look, it wasn't just a one-off project. It's something that's can build over time to create a more fire protected landscape, or however you want to wordsmith that to make it sound like a easy sale.
I don't know if the oversight committee or whoever made the project proposals anticipated us using the comment section like that, but I almost feel like we need like a supplemental document with a lot of them, because as Brittany and I started putting, we tried to put just some information about like where the acreage that we were assuming or the price came from or whatever, and that was kind of almost for us to remember what we did and where that number came from. But nowhere in that proposal does it really ask for very much of those details, but I feel like we all feel like we should provide that because it makes it more, just the more you talk about these projects, the more they sound fantastic, and like they are going to tier into a bunch of other things, and they're connected, and there's lots of partners and lots of momentum. And so I definitely want to add that. It's just, I don't know how big because that comment section, they're trying to make it a one-page document. So every time you type in there, the font gets smaller and smaller is all it does. The box doesn't get bigger. So at some point, if we put too much in there, you won't be able to read it. But we'll try and figure that out and see. I would hope that you put in, we'll just try and be as concise as possible. But if they have questions, hopefully the the committee will reach out to us and we'll have the opportunity to expand on these as needed. Because like I say, they didn't even ask for maps or anything. And I don't know how familiar everybody that's reviewing these projects are going to be with the actual project areas either. So.
I guess I guess the other benefit of being first in line is in the comments section, say see attached, and attach a one pager that has the details, and worst case they go, oh, send it back to you guys and say make it fit on one page. But I mean,
yeah,
we're so early in this process that if it needs more detail, I wouldn't give them a 50-page document attached to it, but if it spills over onto a second page, I don't see that being the end of the world.
So this is Wyatt again. I'm not sure how tied up we really have to do or have to get on prioritizing many of these things, because if we're thinking about projects getting done on private property in conjunction with NDOW or U.S. Fish and Wildlife or any other partner, that's already going on. And that will move forward pretty easily. And also, this is statewide, not just here. But then as fires roll through the area, as we were talking about during the tour, that seeding projects and different modifications can be included into fire damage and the after effects of fire, that seems to happen fairly easily after a fire. So the Wells PPA, which covers most of our 7, 8, and 9 areas, is a massive step up and above and beyond most of the rest of Nevada as far as getting projects done on BLM ground. I just think in general, not just that we have a project list with Carrie and Cam that have been going on for quite some time, that started with sage grouse that we're delving into and dipping out of, that have been on the list for quite some time. And in addition to that, the Wells PPA coming down the pike, that there's going to be money coming our direction. In my opinion, there's going to be money coming our way to do work on BLM ground pretty soon and pretty easily. And so if we just stick to, like Chris was saying, just pick the most valuable projects, because it's not going to be hard to connect any of these projects in area 7 or 8 with in between fires, fuel breaks, highways, mule deer crossings, private property. We can tie in different projects all over this area very, very easily. So I think we can just pick a direction and go with it and not necessarily worry about the rest of the state as much. I think we are so far advanced in this process than the rest of the state that I believe we're going to get money thrown at us in some in many different ways. And so I'm pretty confident that no matter what we pick, it's going to go.
So do you guys want to submit all 6 projects, basically 3 for area 7 and 3 for area 8? Do you guys want to do that, or do you want to try and pare it down to 3 only from our team?
I'm leaning more and more after we've talked through this, 3 and 3, 3 for each one of them. Again, we've talked through the details of these projects, and I don't think there's a bad one on the list, and there's a variety on the list, so that they're not all fire breaks or they're not all just study based. So I think just with a little bit of cleanup, as we discussed on some of the comments sections and some additions there, I think I would support 3 and 3.
I'd agree with that.
I agree. I think we should submit all 6.
Okay. Let me, just to make sure, since we have to actually make a decision on these, let's just real quick. So on the Charleston one for area 7, it's $95,000. It would require a DNA from BLM. Was there anything we wanted to change on that particular project proposal? I didn't write anything down, but Cam, do you have any thoughts about that one? Would we want to change anything on that one?
Been a while since I read it. And so it just says shrub planting, not bitter brush specifically or sagebrush specifically.
In the comments, we put sagebrush and bitterbrush
Okay.
seedlings. Should we put and or?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Okay, yeah, look that over, just from a BLM perspective and see if there's anything we need to change there, but it sounded like that one was okay as written. The Goose Creek bitter brush, we can definitely put BLM as a partner in, trying to think if we mentioned anything. Yeah. So do you think, Brittany, do you still think we should put the 26,000, assuming that we would have to buy seedlings, bitter brush seedlings for that one?
I don't think it would hurt because even if the BLM does get approval to put bitter brush there this year, we could put additional there the following year because that NEPA should still be open next year too, I believe.
Okay.
Based on the 5-year rule. So that's my opinion, but if anyone disagrees.
Okay, I think that one, Murdoch Mountain, I will change the U.S. Fish and Wildlife contributing amount to 75,000. I will add in something about Wine Cup Gamble on there. They made the, Joe Glasscock made the request from us that he really appreciates and will appreciate and be fully behind any tree removal up there as well. He did ask if we could focus on the springs up there. That would be an additional request. And all the springs are on private. And those of you that are familiar, like Murdoch Springs, I mean, it would be a game changer to be able to get some of those trees out around there. I know that that spring would become so much more functional in that. So I think there's a benefit to mule deer, especially since the mule deer get to that country so early in the winter and are still have a need for water. And then of course, from a sage grouse standpoint, that would bolster that too, with having those springs, you know, with actual riparian areas around them instead of juniper right up to the water source. So I told him that maybe, I don't know that we'll put it in this proposal, but maybe through a different process or some other funding, we could go and look at 2 of the other springs that were north of there that didn't fall within this immediate area. The way that we came up with the polygons and areas that we did was we overlaid a bunch of collared deer data that I had. And so where deer had actually spent their time and were, you know, where I've seen them on survey and all of that. So we were trying to keep the acreage realistic because obviously you guys know how Murdoch looks. You could, especially if you tried to do anything around the base of Murdoch, you could, it's endless. And already it was all we could do to get it down to less than $300,000 project up there. So anyway, I think that we probably shouldn't add any acreage, but just wanted to add that was a request from Joe Glasscock. And okay, so I think I kind of went out of order. I'm sorry, I meant to do all the area 7 ones first, but that's okay. So then on Meadow Creek, I think that what I can just do is I can adjust this instead of talking about the BLM's programmatic EIS, I will adjust it to talk about the O'Neill Basin PPAEA because I did not know. Would you mind sending me that updated field break shape file, Cam, if you can, please, when you get a chance?
Yep, I'll make a note and if I can find it tonight, otherwise it'll be Thursday.
Yeah, that's fine. So we will update it to put that in there as well. Since we're talking about it, Wyatt, and you're on, would there be anywhere that we could do any modification or how are the fences in there? I didn't look at it from that perspective, but is there any opportunity while we were in there to make any changes to any of the fences as far as either modifying the number of wires or spacing?
There is actually in between fences along Mary's River and T Creek when when the ranches were fenced off the creek and allowed water gaps, fences were added, but nothing was taken out. And I would venture to say between Mary's River and T Creek, there's probably 1.5 miles of fence that serves no purpose whatsoever anymore, due to exclosures. And portions of the fence that were added are wildlife friendly, but where the projects were tied into existing fences, we're still looking at fences that are 80-year-old
50 plus.
that are nowhere near wildlife friendly. And so along that same corridor of that Meadow Creek, fuels break, it kind of parallels Mary's River and T Creek from what I could tell. Cam, if you could send me that map as well, since it kind of ties in with our private, that'd be great. But yes, along both of those creek corridors, T Creek and Mary's River, there is a fair amount of fence modification and removal of unnecessary fences that could be mapped out quite easily and probably be modified very easily with the BLM and alternative funding sources. And so whether we wanted to address that next year or whatnot, it's definitely a major migration corridor that could be improved a little bit. So
I wonder if, since we're not exactly at this point asking for anything because the NEPA hasn't even been done, so we're not really asking for funding for fuel breaks in Meadow Creek. I wonder if we could just kind of call it the Meadow Creek Enhancement Project, and we could talk about some money for modification, fence removal, and then also talk about the fuel, supporting the O'Neill Basin PPAEA that's going to put a fuel break in there too, kind of just have it be that area. I don't know if that complicates that too much, but then we would specifically be asking for funding to work on the fences while we're waiting for NEPA to get done on the fuel break. Do you guys see a value in that perhaps?
Yeah, I do.
it could be pretty easily combined into kind of a regional project for certain. I mean, you're talking about it's not a massive area, but it's, a 7 or 8 mile corridor that's used pretty heavily with the migrating deer, and hasn't seen a lot of attention in quite a while. And I was thinking about that the past few weeks, riding through there, that, there's, just the amount of fence that is no longer even necessary there. Just having that removed would be a very good thing. And
I like that. I like that approach, and maybe we just change the title of that one to, Meadow Creek Migration Corridor or something like that.
And it really ties in, north to south, that Charleston Fire. It really ties in fairly well, all the way from the Charleston Fire all the way to the forest boundary, which kind of seems to be where we quit working, so to speak.
Yeah, it definitely is in the neighborhood. So we could either tie them together. I think because one requires perhaps a DNA and the other one, just so we didn't get too complicated on maybe from a BLM clearance standpoint, maybe keep them separate that way. But definitely that whole area it's not a surprise to me that we're choosing that area, because it's hugely important. And getting the stuff that burned in better shape, making sure the stuff that's in decent shape doesn't burn, making it easier for deer to cross, all of that is just going to be a huge benefit. So I think that we could figure that out. Yeah, so maybe I'll take a crack at that, maybe changing that one, the Meadow Creek one, a little bit to kind of reflect what we just discussed, and let you guys look at that one again. As far as we didn't talk much about, but basically the non-habitat projects for Area 8 was mule deer habitat use assessment. And this was basically talking about putting collars on 20 deer in Area 8, just because we're realizing that we have data gaps of the way that those deer are utilizing that corner up there, as far as timing goes and how they're using things now that the fire has burned through. And so we could, and with the idea to be able to target where habitat work would be most important. So we could, what I like about when you propose collaring projects, you want to have enough deer, just because you don't want to pick that one deer that did something weird, like never came into Nevada, just went to Utah and never came back or something like that. So you want a handful, but if the price tag was too high, they could always say, we don't think it should go for 69,000, but maybe do 15 collars instead or whatever. And there leaves some room for negotiation if funding is the reason why that one's concerned. But for that one, I will add in, so Todd, you think it'd be okay to add in $20,000 from EDU on that one, right?
Yep, 100%.
Okay, we will do that. So that will be a partner. And I think that will make that one much more rise to the top there. And then the
Carrie?
teeth connect. Oh, go ahead.
I noticed on this one that we're talking about and the other one for the jaws, I believe in the lower part of them comments in the page, it asks about public access to hunting, and both of them were no. Is there a reason why they were no, or?
So I got I'm confused about this question, and maybe I should ask whoever put this together, because what I was wondering is it saying that the project isn't getting access? I think if you were going after access, you would say yes, if that's what the project was on number 12 there. However, because I think I originally, and Tom might have changed this, I think I said yes on all of these, just because I wanted to show, yeah, there's public access, and I wanted to maybe help that promote the project, because it wasn't on private land that the public didn't have access to. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but was your thought that because the project wasn't bolstering access or getting additional access, that we put no on that?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember. I think that's kind of what I was thinking. I feel like that question probably has a lot more to do with doing projects on private land, whatever. And if there are projects done on private land, maybe hunter access is, something they're looking for. They don't want to just, enhance somebody's private land if nobody's going to get on there. But yeah, I'm trying to remember that specific one. I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. Probably what I was thinking.
Yeah, maybe who should we contact, Tom, if we have questions specifically about these project proposal form questions? Would it be Mike?
Yeah, it'd be Mike. And
Okay.
I've reached out to him a couple of times with a few questions, and he's pretty busy and hasn't got back to me yet, but hopefully we'll get a little more clarification soon.
I should have asked him when he called me at 7:30 this morning, so. Okay, I'll put,
I was
I'll
just
put a
wondering
little-
because I think all the rest of them said that were checked yes, except for them. So something I noticed.
yeah, I think I had put yes on all of them, and then, yeah, so we'll get clarification on that, because I think that I would like to portray that we're talking about public lands where the hunters would have access to. So I would like to do that. But if they are talking about if the particular project has anything to do with access, then we would put no. So we'll get clarification on that, just to make sure that it's appropriate. Anybody else have any more thoughts or ideas on these?
Just a question,
I
Carrie.
guess
on
my
the-
only,
Go ahead,
go ahead,
Chris.
Joel.
Yeah, sorry, Chris.
On
you,
the,
you go, bud. You go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
on the teeth collection one, I see that the total ask on there is $1,500. I believe Todd mentioned that Elko Bighorns was willing to donate that $1,500. Do
Yep.
we still submit that one, or if we have full funding for it, do we just move forward with it? That was my only question there.
So this comes up, I think this question comes up with the next step, because if we submit a project, it's funded. I don't know if we're asking, yeah, so this happened when Tom and Brittany and Caleb and I talked. So let's say that the Oversight Committee decides not to go through. Does the group, do we not do it? Or if we can fund it ourselves or whatever? And that's something that's a little unclear, because absolutely, we probably don't need to put it to the committee, although I think that this is just so hard, because you want it to be a feather in the cap of, this is something we're doing, right? And this will benefit, sportsmen and the deer herd in general as we try and manage it moving forward. And so you want it to be accounted for as a project being done to benefit mule deer under the Mule Deer Enhancement Program, right? And project. So I think you do. But then if they don't support it, that's when I would ask the question, could we do it? Could we do it anyway, if we're not asking for any funding? So maybe that would be the best way to go at that.
Makes sense to me. Thanks.
Well, this is why, if the Oversight Committee sees our request for this teeth collection and age analysis and says, yeah, we're all behind that, and throws $1,500 for it, then Todd and the Bighorn, group could send those funds elsewhere. So I don't know that it's a bad thing, unless we have another project to take its place.
Well, and I don't think that the Oversight Committee has any funding. I think they are just going to decide which project should go through and then help find the funding, I think is the idea. I don't think the Oversight Committee actually, there is no funding that they have. They would just probably, maybe they would go ask somebody else or find, and $1,500 is a pretty low amount. So it's a pretty easy one. And so I think that hopefully this would be like just a low hanging fruit slam dunk type of project. But this will be a good one to kind of test the waters, because, asking for $285,000 versus $1,500 is pretty different. And they might just want to go see this one go through because it's easy, it's funded, just go and move forward. So it'll be interesting to see what they think. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, I think Chris and I were thinking along the same lines as well as we were talking over each other there. So I apologize, Chris. And that was my concern is I would love to have this tooth data as we go into the quota meetings next year. Obviously, there's been a lot of contention around the quotas for 081 over the last 5-6 years. And so my thought was, given the fact that we do have the funding committed from Elko Bighorns Unlimited, and I know it's nice to get a feather in our cap as a win here of a project that's approved, but I don't know necessarily if that feather is worth waiting another year, if it's going to take us that long to get that approval, where we could have that data going into the 2022 quota meetings. Otherwise, I don't know if we'll get this project approved and get everything sent out to the hunters in time to have that data collected this year.
So here's the potential hiccup in that is that this group came up with it and thinks it's a good idea, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the staff in the Reno office, or if we wanted to do this, NDOW has to run it. We can't just go do this because we do have to, we send them to hunters and we've got to use our list and we've got to be the one to process the teeth and all of that. So we have to have buy-in from all of NDOW, or not all of NDOW, but the appropriate people with NDOW. And so, I don't know, can you step in and help me with this, Tom? Could we do it without sending it through the process? Would we work through those chains internally?
I think there's potential to pull it off internally without going through the process, but I mean, because of the process, I think our opportunities are going to be a little more limited maybe than they would have been before, because this process, a lot of these projects other groups are putting in are going to be prioritized. So just the capacity and money and just dealing with all this stuff, I think going through this process is the best way to do it. And if we can get it prioritized through the process, it'll get done. If it doesn't get approved through the process, we potentially could still do it, but there's going to be so many other projects that are being put on our plate through this process. It just might fall off the plate.
Yeah, because that's the tricky part, Joel, is I think you and I and our group thinks that this is a pretty reasonable thing to do. But if you think about the other groups, I've heard rumors of some of the projects coming forward out of the other groups. I mean, from farming deer to all sorts of stuff. And so I think that the hard part is we think that it's a great idea, but we have to get the buy-in. And so otherwise we would have to carry the torch internally. But like Tom says, if other groups put more, if we have capacity issues with the other groups, because what happens is these teeth get sent in, you got to get them all cleaned up and you know, ready to send to Madson's and all of that. I mean, you literally have to send out the letters. And then there's cleaning that needs to be done and stuff. So it does require a person or people to do it as easy as it sounds like it should be. And it's not a huge process, especially in Area 8 where we have so few tags. But the hard part would be is if 2 or 3 other groups also wanted to do it, and then you're increasing. Do you see what I'm saying? So we just have to, even though we think it's a great idea, I think it has to go through that prioritization process through NDOW to make sure that we can accomplish it. And that needs to go up the chain there. But we certainly can ask the questions and be doing that, maybe paralleling that if it doesn't come out on top on the Oversight Committee's prioritization.
Okay.
This is White. I think it's pretty important that we submit projects for both areas 7 and 8, because as you're talking about it, if we only pick 3 things, I'm pretty sure the tooth analysis is not going to make the cut, you know, compared to the rest of the projects. So separating 7 and 8 is probably pretty important. And if the Oversight Committee in the state does feel that it's a very important endeavor, maybe this gets turned into a 2-year process and the information is even more important.
And that's what I proposed, I believe. I said for 2 hunting seasons. Yeah,
show
to make
2
sure.
years on there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from a funding perspective, if Bighorn is funding it for 1 go around, and then the state says, yeah, that's a really good idea, let's see what's going on, because that's a big issue in Area 7. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. None of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say after all that discussion, I'd support just staying the course and submitting it.
Okay, so now the question is, because I am just not very familiar with these types of, if we make, it says for possible action on our agenda, do you guys feel comfortable with me making the edits and changes that we talked about? Would you like me to do that, submit it? I'm just not sure. I would assume we have to officially vote to send the proposals through. Do we need to do I need to edit them, us get back together for a quick vote via Zoom or something in the future? How should we proceed from here?
So I'll defer to Wyatt and Joel just because they're more familiar with the commission process. But I mean, I would be comfortable with you capturing the edits as we've discussed if we were to vote. I just don't know if that passes the muster as far as being legit with public meeting laws. And Joel and Wyatt may have a better, or Tom may have a better idea to what the right approach there is.
I think my voter thought would be we just have an ask Carrie to make the revisions that that we all discussed tonight. And then she can send those out to us again. We just call a quick meeting to vote. And I think my understanding is only one of either myself or Wyatt can be a voting member on that anyways. So only one of us can vote so that we don't have two voting members from the cab. Would be my thought, though, is just to have a chance to approve the final version before we submit those to the Oversight Committee.
Wyatt, did you get a chance to talk to AG about any of those or have any idea where he's at with this?
No, he's been pretty tied up with Conservation District
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. Maybe I would get a chance to reach out to AG and see if he had any edits or anything as well. So maybe we could do that. I can make the edits, send them back out to everybody, talk to AG, and then yeah, we could just have a quick vote on it as soon as we get all that through.
I agree. And I don't think there were massive changes, but there were probably enough changes throughout this discussion that it would behoove us to lay our eyes on it one more time.
And can this group vote via email vote, or does it have to be a Zoom or in person?
I'll weigh in there. I believe it's going to have to be agendized and provide opportunity for public input, that kind of thing. I doubt if there will be any, but I think we'll have to probably have a quick meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and speaking of public comment, that is the next thing on the agenda.
Well, sorry, Carrie, should we actually have a motion to direct Endow to make those changes as we discussed in this meeting, and that we do want to have all 6 of these moving forward, but before we move on, I think that would be good to capture that in the minutes.
Sure.
So I'll go ahead and make that motion that we do move forward with all 6 proposals, 3 for Area 7, 3 for Area 8. And that Department of Wildlife incorporate the changes as discussed during this meeting, which will be sent out then for a quick vote at a future meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, motion was made by Chris and seconded by Joel. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And so we will do that. We'll work with Brittany and or Cam, and we'll get all the information we discussed and get those back out to you guys. Tom, since we don't appear to have members of the public, do we still need to take a brief break for public comment? Or would they have come in? How do we handle that?
Yeah, I think we need to do a quick break for public comment, maybe mention the email address, and I don't know, maybe Charlie wants to weigh in, but
okay, so that
for public comment for sure.
Yeah, so written comments can be accepted at mdowgame@mdow.org and make a comment. So let's take a 5-minute break and we'll get back together and discuss any public comments. Okay, everyone. I think that was about 5 minutes. I forgot to look exactly when we left, but Tom, did we get any public comments?
Nope, no public comment.
Okay. So given that, so the next thing on the agenda is future meetings. Do we need to just get the edits made and create a doodle poll? Does anybody have anybody? I think we're gonna have to probably work around hunting seasons for folks. I'm guessing a little bit too. I know I'm gonna be out for about a week myself. So anybody, I can try and get this turned around as soon as possible. I don't think it'll take too terribly long. Anybody have any thoughts about maybe when you're not available versus when you are?
This
I
is
think
why
I'm pretty much available.
Go ahead, Wyatt.
I'm pretty sure if you guys are able to put these changes together, that you just need enough time for public notice for this next meeting, I would think. And my other question was, with this group, how many people need to be part of a quorum? Because I'm pretty sure that most everybody was on the same page tonight. How many of us are needed to move this on?
Do you know the answer to that, Tom?
I don't, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing there's what, 6, 7, 8, 9 folks. So what, 5? If there's 9. Well, I guess BLM's not a voting member of the team. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Well, and like Joel said, Joel and I don't believe can vote at the same time. So
Yeah, that's right. So it would be about 7. So 4, I'm guessing, would be a quorum.
Okay, so maybe I'll just do my best at picking a day and time, and we'll just make sure that at least 4 folks. But in the interim, if you have any more thoughts or edits or whatever, feel free to reach out to me, email me or something, and I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, I just my schedule is gonna get kind of busy. I've got to help with some antelope surveys, and then I'm gonna be gone. But I'll try and get it turned around as quickly as possible and get it back out, just because I know we're ahead of the game, but it sure would be nice to get these submitted so that it could start being proposed. So I know we're all excited to get a move forward. So we'll do it as soon as possible. So I'll just send out an email when they're ready with the proposals, and then maybe at that time suggest a date and time. Okay. If anybody doesn't have anything else, we can go ahead and officially adjourn the meeting at 7:25. We will be in touch. Thank you guys all for being here and spending part of your evening doing this. I think it's important, and I'm super excited about the project. So we're going to move forward. I think it's going to be a great start.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Yep, thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody take care. We'll be in touch. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.